So I stood outside the restaurant for a full 5 minutes before I went in. It was one of those places where the waiters wore suits and the walls whispered money. The valet had looked at my car like it offended him. A 2009 sedan with a missing hubcap doesn't exactly scream welcome guest. But I was invited, wasn't I? At least I thought I was. My son Daniel was getting married that weekend. This was the rehearsal dinner. His fiancée Emily's family was hosting it. The email said intimate gathering, dressy casual, and I spent 2 hours ironing the one nice dress I owned and borrowing earrings from my neighbor. I walked through the heavy glass doors, clutching my purse, heart pounding like I was 17 again and showing up to prom alone. The hostess smiled tightly. "Name Ellen Mitchell," I said. Her smile vanished. She scanned her tablet and tilted her head. One moment. She stepped away, and in less than a minute, Emily appeared. Beautiful, polished, hair pulled back like she stepped out of a bridal magazine. She didn't hug me. "Ellen," she said. "Hi. I'm glad you made it." I smiled. I wasn't sure where to go. She looked me over my department store dress, my scuffed heels, the tiny gift bag in my hand. Then she leaned in. "Listen," she said quietly, "tonight is kind of for close family and a few of Dad's business guests. You know, people who fit the setting." I blinked. "I'm Daniel's mother." She offered the kind of smile you give someone who spilled wine on your carpet. "I know, but it's a very specific guest list. We were worried this place might feel a little out of place for you. It's nothing personal." It was the most personal thing anyone had ever said to me. I stood there stunned. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses echoed from the private room behind her. I could hear Daniel's voice. I could hear people toasting. I wasn't invited to toast. I wasn't even welcome to sit. "I understand," I said. I don't know how I said it. I turned around, walked back through the lobby, past the hostess, who couldn't meet my eyes, past the valet, who already had someone else's keys in his hand. No one followed me. I sat in my car with the windows rolled up and stared at the velvet gift bag in my lap. Inside was a framed photo of Daniel and me at his college graduation. I had planned to give it to them tonight with a handwritten note about how proud I was. Instead, I drove home in silence. When I got to my apartment, I placed the frame back on my bookshelf right next to his baby picture and his soccer trophy from 5th grade. Then I made myself tea. Alone. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because some pain is too familiar for tears. Some pain settles in quietly, like a tenant you didn't invite, but you've learned how to live with anyway. And in that silence, one thought echoed louder than the rest. If I was too poor for their dinner, why was I never too poor to raise their groom? You don't raise a child thinking they'll forget you. You raise them because you love them, because every fiber of your body is wired to protect them, to lift them up, to keep them warm when the world is cold. You do it with open hands and a tired back, and you pray that one day they'll remember what it cost you, but no one tells you that sometimes they won't. The night after the rehearsal dinner, I couldn't sleep. I lay on my worn-out mattress, staring at the ceiling fan, spinning like a slow, tired clock. I thought about Daniel, about how many nights I spent praying he'd grow into a man who was kind, strong, and good. He did. Just not to me. My mind drifted to the early years, when it was just me and him in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled like mildew in the summer and rattled when the wind blew in the winter. Daniel was 5 when his father left. He said he was too young to settle down, like parenthood was some temporary detour he never signed up for. He disappeared with a duffel bag and a smirk, and we never heard from him again. No postcards, no child support, just a void. I picked up a second job the following week. At first, it was cleaning houses during the day and waiting tables at night. I'd come home after midnight, my feet throbbing, and find Daniel asleep on the couch, with his arms around my old sweatshirt waiting for me. I'd kiss his forehead, cover him with a blanket, and heat up whatever leftover food I could scrape together from the kitchen. Sometimes I ate. Most times I didn't. But Daniel always did. He loved scrambled eggs with cheese and ketchup. I can't count how many nights we made that dinner together, laughing like it was Thanksgiving, even if we were using plastic forks and eating off paper towels. I remember one Christmas Eve, we didn't have money for a tree, so we made one out of green construction paper taped to the wall. He decorated it with crayons and macaroni. He called it our magic tree. I cried in the bathroom so he wouldn't see. When he was 9, he asked me why I never bought anything for myself. I said, because I already have what I need. I have you. That wasn't a line. It was the truth. He was my everything, my reason to keep going, my anchor and my wings. I taught him how to ride a bike by holding the seat and whispering, "You've got this," over and over again until he finally believed it. I was the one clapping the loudest at his spelling bees, at his little league games, at his 8th grade graduation, where he wore a thrift store suit 2 sizes too big because it was all we could afford. And when he got into college on a partial scholarship, I took out a loan to cover the rest. The bank wanted a cosigner. I had no credit, so I promised them I'd pay back every penny. And I did. It took me 7 years. I skipped dentist appointments. I ignored the strange sound my car made for 3 months. I turned down every date and every vacation. I said no to life so he could say yes to his future. He never knew, not really. Because I didn't tell him. I didn't want him to feel guilty. I wanted him to feel free. And maybe that's where I went wrong, because freedom without memory can feel a lot like entitlement. He never saw the nights I patched holes in my shoes instead of buying new ones. He never saw the stress etched into my hands from counting coins at the gas station. He only saw that there was always gas, always dinner, always love. And that was the point. But now, standing outside of that picture-perfect restaurant, turned away like a stranger, I wondered if maybe I'd hidden my struggle so well that I'd also hidden my worth. Because that's the truth they don't write on baby shower cards or graduation speeches. When you love too silently, people forget to thank you out loud. I sat at the kitchen table the morning after the rehearsal dinner, flipping through old photo albums. Daniel in overalls, Daniel on Halloween, Daniel with 2 front teeth missing, and a grin that could melt steel. I still loved him. God help me, I still did. But that love was changing shape. It wasn't soft anymore. It was solid, grounded, like a wall you lean on when everything else is collapsing. I didn't need his invitation. I didn't need a place at their table. I had already built the house he was standing in. And deep down, I knew something else. If there was any part of the man he had become worth celebrating, I was the reason. Even if no one said it. Even if they never will. The morning of the wedding, I stood in front of the mirror, trying to convince myself I belonged there. I'd taken my time getting ready, wore the same navy blue dress I had worn to Daniel's college graduation. I pinned my hair back neatly. I even dusted on some blush I hadn't used in years, just enough to feel like I had color in my cheeks again. I didn't have a designer purse or pearls or heels that cost more than my electric bill, but I looked presentable, proud even. I arrived early, not too early, just early enough to take a deep breath before walking in. The venue was breathtaking. White chairs lined the garden path like rows of teeth. Everything was pristine, expensive, symmetrical. It smelled like fresh-cut roses and expectation. A young woman with a clipboard greeted me at the entrance. She looked at my name, then at her seating chart, then gave me a polite "right this way." I followed her, weaving through rows of guests already seated and sipping pre-ceremony mimosas. As we walked past the central aisle, I caught a glimpse of Emily's family at the front, her mother in a tailored champagne-colored dress, holding court like she owned the place. The clipboard girl stopped, smiled. "Here's your seat, ma'am." It was in the back, behind a column, right next to the catering table. I stared at the folding chair. A single program sat on top of it. No name card, no reserved sign, just an empty seat, close enough to hear the laughter, far enough not to be part of it. I sat down slowly, smoothed my dress, and reminded myself to breathe. Across the aisle, I saw Daniel's father, my ex-husband, sitting beside his new wife. They looked polished, and pleased. She wore a pale yellow dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her hair was done in a soft chignon, and she wore a pearl necklace I was pretty sure I'd seen in a Tiffany catalog once. She looked like the kind of woman Emily's family wanted standing near the altar. I looked down at my lap, my hands twisting in silence. When the music began, everyone stood. The bride glided down the aisle, radiant in lace. Daniel waited for her at the altar, looking sharp, tall, nervous. He beamed when he saw her. His eyes sparkled. He didn't glance back. Not once. During the ceremony, I clapped when everyone clapped. I smiled when they kissed. I laughed politely when the officiant made a joke about married life. But inside, I was somewhere else. Somewhere between the night shifts, the peanut butter sandwiches, the secondhand backpacks. The mornings I braided his hair for Spirit Week because he insisted on dressing up like Albert Einstein. The tears I dried, the battles I fought, and now, here I was, behind the column, watching my own son start a new life as if I were just another guest, like a distant cousin or someone who worked at his preschool. During the reception, I was placed at a table near the restrooms, a few seats away from the speakers, so loud they rattled the silverware. A waiter accidentally spilled club soda next to my chair. He apologized, but no one came to help clean it. I laughed gently and used my napkin. My table mates were sweet but unfamiliar. A couple from Emily's father's office, one of her cousins, a college friend. None of them knew who I was. One of them asked politely, "So how do you know the couple?" I smiled. I raised the groom. Her eyes widened. Oh, you're his mom," I nodded. She looked over toward the head table. "That's funny. They didn't announce you during the speeches." No, they didn't. When it came time for toasts, Emily's father spoke. So did her mother. Daniel's best man, his childhood friend, gave a hilarious speech about college antics and loyalty. Then came Daniel. He stood tall, holding a champagne flute, beaming. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," he said. "This day means everything to us, especially to our families who have supported us and helped shape the people we've become." He turned toward Emily's parents. "To my in-laws, thank you for welcoming me like a son." They applauded. "To my dad and stepmom, thank you for showing me what a healthy, loving marriage looks like." More applause. I waited. Maybe he was building to it. Maybe he'd save me for last. Maybe. But then he raised his glass. To love. To new beginnings. Cheers rang out. And just like that, the mic was passed to the DJ. He hadn't forgotten me. He had omitted me. My fingers trembled just a little as I took a sip of lukewarm water. And then I smiled, because somewhere between being overlooked and being used, something inside me stopped shrinking. Maybe they thought I was too poor for their spotlight, too plain for their story. But they had no idea how rich I was in experience and sacrifice, in silent strength. And I was done pretending to be grateful for scraps. I stood up quietly and stepped away from the table. I didn't storm out. I didn't cry. I simply walked toward the exit. And as I passed the head table, Daniel caught a glimpse of me. He froze. Our eyes met. And in that moment, I think, he knew. I wasn't planning to leave early. I told myself I'd stay until the cake, smile for a few photos, try to blend into the background like I always had. But after Daniel's speech, after he toasted his father, his in-laws, and even his stepmother, and left me out like I was a footnote in his biography, I couldn't make myself stay seated. Something inside me rose up and said no more. So I stood, straightened my back, walked with purpose toward the exit, past clinking glasses and bursts of laughter. My heels echoed against the marble floor like tiny hammers. No one noticed until Daniel did. Our eyes locked. For a second, he looked confused. Then, he looked ashamed. He started to rise. But I kept walking. I made it halfway down the corridor before I heard his voice behind me. "Mom, wait." I paused, slowly turned around. He jogged to catch up with me, one hand loosening the tie at his neck, the other holding a glass of champagne that had gone flat. "You're leaving?" he asked. I smiled. "The speeches are over. I wasn't sure what else there was to stay for." His mouth opened, closed. opened again. I didn't mean, he stammered. It all happened so fast up there. The toasts. I got nervous. I didn't mean to leave you out. You didn't forget me, Daniel, I said quietly but firmly. You edited me out. That hit harder than I expected. His shoulders fell. I was trying to keep things smooth, he said. Emily's parents. They're sensitive about appearances, and I didn't want to complicate things with the truth I finished for him. He looked down at his shoes. I'm not angry, I added. Truly. I'm just tired of being proud in private while other people get praised in public for doing less. He swallowed. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. He nodded. I know. I looked around the corridor. Guests mingled nearby. Music pulsed softly in the background. We stood in the shadow of the celebration, two people on opposite sides of the same life. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my purse and handed it to him. He opened it. It was the letter I had written weeks ago, the one I never had the courage to send after the rehearsal dinner. Inside were memories, snapshots, truths. The day I taught him to read with flashcards I made from cereal boxes. The night I slept in my car during his freshman orientation because I couldn't afford a hotel. The time I sold my wedding ring to help pay for his textbooks. His hands trembled. I didn't know, he whispered. I never wanted you to, I said. I wanted you to fly, but not at the cost of pretending I wasn't the wind. For a long moment, we stood there, silence swelling between us like a tide. Then, without a word, Daniel turned and walked back into the reception hall. I thought that was it, until I heard the microphone turn on again. Excuse me, his voice echoed through the speakers. I need to say one more thing. The music stopped. Conversations died. People turned in their seats. He stood at the front alone this time, eyes scanning the room, until they landed on me, still frozen in the doorway. I left someone out of my speech earlier, he began, voice unsteady. Not by accident, by fear. And I regret that. Whispers stirred across the room. This woman, he said, pointing toward me, is not just my mother. She's the reason I can stand here in a tuxedo and call myself a man. Now all eyes were on me. She didn't give me money. She gave me everything else. She gave me rides when we had no gas. Gave me dinners when she went hungry. Gave me strength when I was too scared to keep going. He paused, swallowed hard. I thought leaving that out would make things easier, make things smoother. But now I know if your story doesn't include the truth, it's not worth telling. He looked at me, voice breaking. I'm sorry, Mom. For the dinner. For the seat in the back. For forgetting that everything I am came from you. Then he said something I'll never forget. She didn't have money, she had me. The room was silent, no applause, just reverence. Then slowly, someone stood. Then another, and another, until the entire room was on its feet, for me. I walked back toward the front, not like a guest, but like a woman returning to her rightful place. Daniel met me halfway, wrapped his arms around me. And in that hug, I felt 16 years of silence crack and fall away. That night, I didn't need a place card. I didn't need an apology dinner. I didn't need revenge. I had the one thing I thought I'd lost, my son. And this time, he saw me. I didn't sleep much that night, but it wasn't from pain. It was peace, a kind of quiet I hadn't felt in years. The silence that comes not from being ignored, but from finally being heard. I sat on the edge of my bed, still wearing the same navy dress, holding the crumpled program from the wedding now scribbled on with Daniel's handwritten apology. I traced the words with my fingertips, not to reread them, but to feel the weight of them. That night, I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't moved, but because some moments aren't meant to be washed away. They're meant to settle deep in your bones and live there. I was still poor. My bank account didn't change. I still had rent to pay, groceries to stretch, and coupons to clip. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. Not in that room. Not in his eyes. And not in my own. 2 weeks later, Daniel came by the apartment. He brought Emily with him. She was quiet at first, polite. She helped me wash teacups, looked through old photo albums, and asked questions she hadn't cared to ask before. At one point, she turned to me and said, "I didn't see it." "I think I didn't want to." I nodded. "I know." She reached into her purse and pulled out a new frame. Inside was a photo me and Daniel standing together at the wedding. His arms around me, both of us laughing like the past had never broken us. "I thought you should have the original," she said. It was the first time I felt like she meant it. Not just the gesture, the respect behind it. Since then, things haven't been perfect, but they've been different. Better. Daniel calls more often. We talk about things beyond surface-level updates. He asks questions about the past, not just to listen, but to understand. And Emily, she includes me now. Small things: a dinner invite, a recipe text, an update on the house hunt. She even asked if I'd help plan the baby shower, not because she needed someone to fill space, but because she wanted me there. I'm not trying to rewrite the story. The hurt happened. The door was closed. The seat was forgotten. The words were said. But what matters more is what came after. I used to believe being poor meant having nothing to offer. But now, I know wealth isn't in what you wear or drive or spend. It's in what you give when no one's watching. It's in who you are when no one's clapping. I gave everything I had. And that night, in front of everyone, I didn't get money or recognition or status. I got something far more valuable. I got seen. And no amount of gold or crystal or catered dinners will ever match the richness of that moment when the whole room stood for a woman who walked in through the back door, but raised a man who stood up front. Have you ever been overlooked because of what you didn't have, instead of seen for all that you gave? Have you ever loved someone so hard they forgot to notice? Share your story below. Let's lift the voices of the mothers no one clapped for until now. Huh?